In this video, we're going to study Lesson 5 in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy's English Composition course. In our last lesson, you learned about the essentials of expression, that there were two basic essentials: to have something to say and to say it well. And you also got started with your first oral composition exercise, which hopefully went well. No matter how it went, you should have gained some experience in composition and communication, which is what's most important. In this next lesson, in Lesson 5, we're going to study the topic of interest. Interest in a topic, interest in a story, whether it's you listening to or reading a story presented by someone else, or you speaking or writing to others and gaining and maintaining their interest. We're going to talk about interest a little bit. So let's begin by reading what our author here has to say, and then we'll discuss it a little bit and move on to Lesson 6. Lesson 5 of interest. In order to enjoy listening to a story, we must take an interest in it. And a story should be told so as to arouse and maintain our interest. As you have begun to practice communicating your experiences with others, and as you listen to the communication of others, you have been more pleased with some than with others. Even though the meaning of each may have been clear, yet the interest aroused was likely different in each case. Since the purpose of a story is to entertain, any story falls short of its purpose when it ceases to be interesting. We must at all times say what we mean and say it clearly. But in storytelling especially, we must also take care that what we say shall arouse and maintain interest. This is Lesson 5 on interest. Now, you have, experienced the efforts of others to communicate with you constantly throughout your life. Every conversation you've had, every school lesson you've studied, every book you've read, every newspaper article you've looked at, every television show, every movie, every commercial, every advertisement. All of these are opportunities for you to consider what is effective in the communication of others. What interests you? What causes you to be interested in something that someone else is communicating, a story they're telling, or whatever it may be? What causes you to be interested in it? What causes you to lose interest in it? When you complain about something and you say, oh, I don't like that, I don't like that book, or I don't like that show, or that's boring, and so on. What is it that causes you to feel that way? As you begin to study composition, you need to start to think about all of these things differently. Not just complaining about something being boring or not interesting, or not just saying that you like a show or like a book or something, but to begin to think why? What is it about this show or this book or that story? What is it that makes it interesting? Is it something about the topic itself that makes it interesting? There are topics that there are topics that no matter what the show was or how it was presented, I'd be interested in it. Or are you interested in something because the author or the speaker has done something to make you interested in it, to arouse your interest? And let's say it's a long story, and you just find that your interest never fades. It just goes from the beginning to end. You're interested the whole time, and somehow the author or the topic is maintaining your interest over time. We need to begin to think, as we study composition, we need to think, Why? What is it about this book or this story or this movie that arouses my interest, that maintains my interest, or that loses my interest? At what point do I just say, that's enough, it's getting boring, and I change the channel or turn it off or close the book? So we have to begin to think about things that we read, shows that we watch, conversations that we participate in, and ask ourselves, what is it that arouses my interest? What is it that maintains my interest? What is it that loses my interest? When I speak to others, what do I say or do? What topics do I talk about that arouses the interest of other people? How do I maintain their interest? Let's say there's one day where I have a conversation with someone and it's a really successful conversation, and I see that the person's interested the whole time. Reflect on that conversation and ask, what was I doing? What was it that caused that person to be interested and remain interested the whole time? Or if I see at a certain point in a conversation that the person doesn't seem like they're interested anymore, what was it that caused that person to lose interest? And begin to pay attention to these things. Because as you continue to develop your skill in composition, you're going to find that one of the best sources for your knowledge and skill in composition is your own experience as a reader, as someone being spoken to, not as a writer, not as one speaking, but put yourself in the position of the audience and think about your own experience as an audience. What the authors do to arouse your interest, to keep your interest, or what do they do that loses your interest? Okay? So think about these things. Think about your own experience, because you're a human being. And what works for you will likely work for others. It's sort of the golden rule of writing. Do unto others what you would have them do unto you. If there's something that they do that you find boring, don't do it to others. If there's something they do that you find interesting and helpful, you need to do that to others. So pay attention and reflect on interest, on your interest when you're listening to a conversation, when you're reading a book, when you're watching a TV show. Pay attention to your interest and think about what's controlling it. Because as you do that, you're gathering helpful information that you can use as a speaker and a writer to gain the interest and keep the interest and avoid losing the interest of people that you're speaking to and writing to. So this topic of interest, a very short lesson, but an important one, and a challenge for you to begin thinking like a writer, paying attention to your own experience, paying attention to the efforts others make to gain your interest, paying attention to the methods others use to gain and keep your interest, paying attention to what causes others to lose your interest, because the same things are going to help you gain and keep theirs. Okay, so study lesson 5 about interest and begin thinking about these things. Begin examining your own experience, your own interest levels, what affects you positively and negatively. And I strongly recommend that you start keeping some kind of journal where you just jot these things down and think about them. You watch a show, pay attention to the show. Don't get caught up in the story like a child just watching for entertainment, but begin to study and think about shows you watch or books you read. Begin to think about them as one who's going to write and communicate, and begin to study and see what the authors do, what the movie makers do, what the book publishers do to get your interest, to keep your interest, and to not let it slip away. Okay, so lesson 5 is on interest, and it presents us with a challenging task to begin analyzing works that we make use of and paying attention to how they affect our interest level, or what it is that affects our interest level. I hope that's helpful for lesson 5 on interest. Study the lesson, begin thinking about these things, and if there's anything you'd like to share or talk about, please post on the forum, and I'd be happy to discuss these things with you and help you to continue to develop your skill in composition. God bless your studies.